Israel and Palestine, the conflict. That's what we're talking about today, guys, on the HPR Chronicles. It's Imani Shakur, film director, and Brother Smith over here, Christopher Smith.
What's up?
The U.S. Army vet, right?
Yes.
That now works for the government, the VA. Now, Crispy brought up this topic this week, but before we go into it, let me just give you the spiel that I always give everybody. The HPR Chronicles, it stands for History, Politics, and Race. And it's a podcast from a pop culture perspective from two handsome young men that are pretty smart.
I do agree.
You know what I'm saying? What we try and do on this podcast, just break it down, keep it simple. You may have heard this stuff before on different platforms, but, you know, we try and just
present it in a different way.
Thank you, Crispy. You know, so it's not pro anything, guys. It's pro truth. You know, we give you factual information that we may give an opinion on.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Don't forget to subscribe. You can email us at rptalktruth@gmail.com. If you have any comment or questions, follow us on social media. All that good stuff. And yeah. We're going to jump it off. Today, we're talking about Israel and Palestine and what that conflict is all about. Now, throughout the years, Chris, even as a child, I mean, because this conflict's been going on for decades upon decades and decades. So even as a child, I would always see this conflict on the news every other day.
Yes.
I'd see a war. I'd see this. I'd see that. And I never really, you know, I kind of dabbled in it. But one of the great things about this podcast is it allows you to research. Even though it's crash study and crash research, it still allows you to research. Yep. And, you know, and in turn, I'm learning a lot of stuff. And like I was telling my daughter yesterday, I'm hoping even people like her, the junior highs and the high school kids, can tune into us. If they hear a subject going on in class for history, they can say, hey, man, let's check out the HPR and see what Shakur and Smith they have to say about it, because we know they're going to tell the truth. You know what I'm saying? And I think you had talked about bringing up what would be taught in school as one of the subjects. I think you would even mention that. Which we'll cover on another show. But correct. Yeah, because it's funny, I was with my daughter the other day and we were talking about reparations. And no, was it electoral college? It was one of them, and it was funny because she would tell me what she had just learned in school. And I was telling her what we talked about, and she was like, "Oh man, you guys, Dad, you guys had a whole different thing." You know what I mean? So anyway, so for episode 5, guys, we're gonna talk about the Israeli Palestinian conflict, which is an interesting subject. And I'm going to get right to it. Like always, because this podcast is a lot of studying, because again, we always want to bring you guys facts as opposed to opinion. So as I go through these topics and stuff and the history, what I'm going to start with is the history of the conflicts and colonization of that region, so you guys could kind of get why the Arab Palestinians even, you know, deemed it their state. You know what I mean? Because they just simply were there. You know what I mean? Just like the Indians were here before the Europeans came, and just like the indigenous people were in Trinidad, where I'm from, before Columbus came, and so on and so forth. I mean, they were just there. So I'm going to go through that history first, just so you guys can see what happened before you started seeing all the stuff on the news. Gotcha. So I'm going to take you back the early 19th century to after the 19th century, because the 19th century is from 1801 to 1900, right? Yep. So and then we'll bring it into today. And Crispy and I both study every week, and sometimes his sources may differ slightly from what I'm reading and vice versa, but usually we're on the same page. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So here we go, guys. The first thing I have to say about this conflict, because if you look at it on the news a lot, you will think that it's a religious conflict, but it's actually not. It never started off as a religious conflict, and you're actually going to see why as I go through these different points. And the first thing I have to say is, the conflict has very little to do with theological differences between Islam and Judaism. It was simply and always about land, just like any, just like the inception of most conflicts are really about land. It's about space. Where can we, rest, settle, put our head down, and have our families have a place to sleep and live and all that kind of stuff.
Build our roots.
Yeah. It's more about nationalism. And if you don't know what nationalism is, the exact definition of nationalism is the identification with one's own nation and support for its interests, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interests of other nations. You know what I mean? So let's talk about the Ottoman Empire first, which ruled that region for over 400 years. Basically the same amount of time, the Europeans had the slavery. Yeah. Basically the same amount of time that slavery went on. The Ottoman Empire ruled this region of Palestine. And at the time, it was 87% Muslim, 10% Christian, and only 3% Jewish. Everyone at the time spoke Arabic as the daily language. You know what I'm saying? And people of all faiths got along and lived together. Similar to how the U.S. is today. Like the daily language is pretty much English. Yes. Even though people speak other things. That's how it was back then. Then in the late 19th century, a Jewish journalist named Theodor Herzl thought the Jews could stay in Europe. Then for whatever reason, he thought the Jews should settle in their own state. The concept of Jewish nationalism was called Zionism. That's where the term actually came from.
Because I guess trying to understand is they are a people and a religion, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know. There's been so many debates about that, but that's a good question. Some people say they're just a religion. They try and claim a race. You know what I mean? Yeah. Some people say they're just white, just like everyone else who just studied. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That'll actually be a good show.
Yeah.
But I don't have an answer to that question.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then in 1917, now I want you guys to follow me because I'm covering almost 100 years just in like bullet points. So then in 1917, Britain, trying to gain support from Jews, issued the Balfour Declaration. And what that was establishing in Palestine a home for the Jewish people, which was wrong and illegal. You know what I'm saying? Why, and like I have in my notes here, why didn't Britain give them a piece of their land? Because when they decided on this Balfour Declaration, Palestine was still under Ottoman rule. And as I said before, it had been for over 400 years, which didn't end until about 1922 after they won the war, which we'll get into. You know what I mean?
So in 1922 is when the Ottoman War, or?
Yeah, was when the Jews asked the ruler of Mecca to fight against the Ottoman, the empire, and they won. Yeah.
Okay.
So in fact, a year before the Balfour Declaration, British promised the French they would divide up the Arab territories and they would keep Palestine. Yeah. So originally, the Brits was like, you know what? We're going to divide this up, France. We're going to give y'all all of it. We're just going to keep Palestine. You know what I'm saying? And again, it wasn't even theirs.
Yeah.
It's the same way Columbus went to all over the Indies and the Europe and Spain and South America and just claimed it. Yep. And it wasn't even theirs. So Britain was doing the same thing to Palestine, which is the inception of all this war and fighting, which you guys will see as we go down the line. Then, again, which you were just asking me, Chris, then they promised the ruler of Mecca he would have an Arab state, including Palestine, if he led a revolt against the Ottoman Empire. So they actually asked the ruler of Mecca to do it. They were like, hey,
if you
go and kick them out, we'll give you a piece of Palestine.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? He did. You know, they won the war. Then Britain created a colony in Palestine to rule until Palestine was ready to take over on its own. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So even though they won and the ruler from Mecca beat them, Britain said, okay, we're just going to occupy here and have a colony until you guys can figure out on your own.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Really, now we're going to be in charge.
Right. Until we put you guys in charge, which they still would have been in charge anyway. Yeah. Because they just, So keep in mind, these are the same Europeans that's doing the same thing to this day. You know what I'm saying? All over the U.S. and all over the other countries and stuff. At this point, the British created separate institutions for Christian, Jews, and Muslims, which further divided the people, which made it easier for them to rule. Now, if you guys remember, as I discussed before, they lived in peace before, when it was a 3% Jews, 10% Christian, 87% Muslim.
Okay.
In fact, and I didn't put it in my notes, there was one musician, right, back in those times, and he would actually celebrate Ramadan, and he would celebrate the Jewish the holidays all in one, because they lived as a people in peace.
Got it.
Even though the Muslims had 80% of the population, people would just live in peace. People would share ideas, religious, interests and all that. It was no big deal.
It was okay.
You know what I mean? So Britain came and they divided everything up, and they knew if they did that, it would be easier for them to rule, because you could divide a people that's it's much easier to rule a nation that's divided than it is to rule one that's actually united, as you know. So that's why they did that. And
by also dividing along the same lines, you're taking the people and keeping them separate too.
Yep.
Then they still, they're going to hate each other.
Yep.
One's going to have to rely on you to help them. So
exactly.
Yep.
It's all strategy. Mm-hmm. So now let's switch back to that Balfour Agreement. The promise to give the Jews a state, which again the British couldn't do anyway, because it wasn't their land to begin with to actually promise to anyone. So between 1920 and 1939, over 320,000 Jews migrated to Palestine. By then, the Jews were just under 30% of the population. Now I want you guys to remember, before all this, the Jews were just 3%. You know what I'm saying? But because of Britain's illegal agreement, now it's 30%. Now, as I go along, are you guys starting to see how the Palestinian people felt a little disenfranchised? Now, this is still like in the 20s and 30s, way before the current wars started going on. You know what I'm saying? So as these 300 and something thousand settlers came from Europe into Palestine, the Jewish settlers, they started to purchase land from absentee non-Palestinian Arab landowners and evicting Palestinian landowners and farmers who were living and working on that land. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The Jews were trying to control the land and the labor, which caused conflict and tension between the Jews and Palestine even more. Yep. As you would see now, we have a slow progression of a takeover. You know what I'm saying? It's all gonna make sense. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to give you guys the history so you guys wouldn't say, well, why are they so upset anyway? But you're starting to see why as you see how the events happened. You know what I mean? Now, and also you got to remember, around this time, Palestine is looking at themselves as a nation. You know what I'm saying? But they see that their land is being taken, and then they revolt against the British, which was one of the first, in-country fighting, similar to, I guess, what you would say, like the Civil War here.
Okay, got it.
You know what I'm saying? Or even the British-American War, when the Americans were like, F Britain, we want to do our own thing, get out of here, we're going to do our own thing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, again, the Palestinian people were like, hey, we're not putting up with this. This is our country. So they led a revolt. You know what I mean? They obviously didn't have the resources and stuff, and the British militia, with the help of with the Jewish militia, the Brits won, right? But it issues a stop to migration of the Jews and called for a joint Jewish and Arab state in Palestine within 10 years. And, you know, again, I guess the Jews were like, this is getting too out of hand. They had
You mean the Brits, right? You said Jews.
yeah. The Brits were like, this is getting out of hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We need to stop this migration that we said could go on. Now, see, this is what's funny. They're the ones that started it and caused the whole thing in the first place.
Okay.
So then when the Palestinians revolted,
Yeah.
they go, whoa. Let's stop. You Jews, you can't come anymore. You know what I'm saying? Because it was just getting out of hand. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
So again, the Brits called for a joint Jewish and Arab state within 10 years. Jews were unhappy because they needed to leave Europe because of all the stuff that was going on there. And the Palestinians were unhappy because they wanted their state, their land. It was always theirs, you know what I mean? Then came World War II.
Yeah.
From 1939 to 1945. The war ended and tensions came back. Then the Brits said, this is too much. Let's hand this shit over to the UN. That's what I have here in my notes. And at that time, the UN was actually newly created. So, you know, one of the things I was studying is that this was actually one of their first big conflicts that they needed to insert themselves in and resolve after it was formed.
Got it.
You know what I'm saying? I didn't put that, but I just remember reading it. Then the UN in 1947 they decided to divide Palestine instead of the UN coming in and saying, "Hey, Britain, you know, you guys were wrong from the start. You've caused a lot of conflict. Let's, you know, find another place for the Jewish settlers. Let's give Palestine back their state." Instead of them saying that, they said, let's divide it, and they didn't divide it half and half, similar to how Haiti and the Dominican Republic is divided. There's a line, and one nation has one half and one. They didn't do it like that.
No,
they did some
crazy,
weird, crazy, you know, division that caused even more conflict.
So here's a question for you: Is like, where would they have gone, or where should they go? Yeah. Because so I know you mentioned and you feel, and it's not exactly about religion, but it's more about having a nation.
Nationalism, yeah.
Yep. So if they did not go back there, which is, you know, for them, so what would be the reason for going back there? Is because they thought Catholicism, or not, that Christianity, or not, Judaism started in that section of the world, right? I
don't know. I have no. I didn't go over that. I just went over the conflict.
Got it. Go ahead.
But but that's actually that's actually a good question. Or like, where would they have gone? I mean, you can. There's a couple of answers I have for that. One.
Okay, you want to discuss it now?
No, I want to answer it though. Okay. It's a podcast. That's what it's for. Yeah. One, they could have given. Palestine could have taken statehood and allowed the Jews to like settle there peacefully. Okay. That's one option. The same way, you know, the Europeans just didn't send us back to Africa. You know what I mean? I mean, of course, we know it's effed up what's going on with the systemic racism here, but that could have been one solution. The way they lived before, when it was 87% Palestine, 3% Jews, and 10% Christian. They all could have lived peacefully, but Palestine could have said, hey, this is our state. You guys can be a part of it, become citizens of a Palestinian state. Okay. That's one solution. The other solution is, I don't know, go back to Germany, Europe, this, that, and the other, migrate back. You know what I mean? I know there's stories of nations doing that, going back to, I don't know, I just remember hearing that and seeing it throughout history. Got it. I don't know who, but that's a great question.
Because everything is already appears to be divided. So where are you going to, put them? But I was just wondering.
Yeah.
And one other little question, you said that they spoke Arabic way back when.
As the daily language.
So what's the language now? There,
I'm sure with the Palestinians it's Arabic, and then with the Jews, with the Israelis, it's whatever their language is.
Okay.
Yeah, because the girl I was seeing that lives there, she's Israeli. She spoke I don't know what the language is called. I don't want to sound stupid, but
Okay.
yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Just wondering.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, like I was saying, the UN divided it. They decided to divide Palestine, but like we said, it was the way they divided it was like just messed up. And you guys could look it up. It's online. You can pull up a map and see how they have like the Gaza Strip next to the Mediterranean Sea.
And then there's a little
thing in the middle that's
curved out.
Yeah,
and then
that's
there's a part at the top.
Yeah, then there's a part at the top, and it gets deeper because that didn't even remain theirs. I mean, so there was just a calculated systemic occupation of land that basically went on, and then you could see why these people are really pissed off. So once again, in 1947, the UN decided to divide Palestine. The Brits, they couldn't handle it anymore. They just handed it over. Now, as you can see, their land was clearly wrongly taken from the beginning and divided up against their will. You know what I mean? So now let's flip to today's time. So this was basically a chronological order of the early 19th centuries, which is what brought it to now. So you could see who ruled it first. It was the Ottoman Empire and this, that, and the other. So Marc Lamont Hill, a college professor, he spoke at the UN in November of 2018. And it's funny because he received a lot of backlash because at the end of his speech, he said, "Free Palestine from the river to the sea." And the reason why he said that, and Marc Lamont Hill, he got fired from CNN because of this.
Yeah,
I mean, they say freedom of speech, but it's not really freedom of speech because as soon as you say something, you get in big trouble.
Depending, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Depending on who you offend.
Yeah, depending on who you offend.
And how.
But again, this shouldn't have even offended anyone. I mean, the fact of the matter is, let's honestly deal in truth here. The fact of the matter is, the Palestinians' land was systemically taken from them throughout history. So they have a right to be upset. And the reason why Marc Lamont Hill said from the river to the sea is because it means from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea and the West Bank and all that. It runs along the Jordan River. So that's why he said from the river to the sea, meaning that entire plot of land should be given back to the Palestinian people, which is where that term came from. And they actually tried to bash Marc Lamont Hill and say that this was a Hamas slogan. But if you guys study, this slogan predates Hamas by decades. That's not even something Hamas came up with.
And this is referring to the West... or the whole place? The whole place,
which is why he said Palestine should be given back to them from the river to the sea, all of it, not just the West Bank. But I learned from studying for our podcast that the reason why that term came is because the Jordan River, it runs along the West Bank,
Mm-hmm.
So okay, guys. So then in 1948, Israel becomes a state. They're given statehood, right? And again, people always say the Israeli settlements, but they're actually occupying Palestine. They're not settling. You know what I mean? And 3 million people, 20% Jewish. Okay, so they're actually occupying the land. Out of 3 million people there, 20% are Israeli citizens. They live in the West Bank, but they are citizens of Israel. Now, keep in mind, they're not supposed to live in the West Bank. You know what I'm saying? You wanna break down how it was divided?
So
why I'm saying they're not supposed to live in the West Bank?
Because the West Bank is in Palestinian territory.
Yeah, that was given to them by the UN.
So the fact that the way it was broken up, which you have the small L-looking section at the bottom, and that is for the Arabs or the Palestinians, and then a nice amount of area that kind of just goes from the bottom left portion, kind of along the sea there, the Mediterranean Sea, and then kind of scoops back in. So then there's another section right in the middle, off to the right, if you're looking at the map, of again Palestinian land,
Right.
And somewhere in there is the West Bank is right next to the Dead Sea,
the Jordan River. Yeah.
the Jordan. Okay, and currently, Israelites are occupying sections of that
the West Bank
and Gaza too.
Yeah, and
Gaza.
They're not supposed to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So guys, basically when they gave, when they decided on this and gave Israel statehood, the Jews agreed to this, but the Arabs didn't, and they looked at this as colonialism, and they actually declared war. You know what I'm saying? And then that's when another war happened. I forget which one it is. You guys could look it up. It's it's there. And then after this war, Israel won, and then they pushed the borders past the UN plan. So at first, in the West Bank and in Gaza and other areas, it was just the Palestinian people.
Yes.
But after this war, when the Arabs said, no, we're not accepting this two-state solution, the Jews took it upon themselves and pushed themselves further and took more land. You know what I mean? And then as you can see how someone can get even more pissed off. So first you take our land and then just say, oh, Jews, you guys can come here and settle. You guys need your own state. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And one
then you divide our land and then split it up how you want it. Then when we say no, you have a fight with us and win and take even more of our land. You know what I'm saying?
One kind of interesting thing, when I think I was listening to the video you were watching, and they talked about how it's, even though this is all going on, people have to drive between sections. So, like you were referring to, Haiti and Dominican Republic, it's divided in half.
Yeah,
you've got
no one
this
has
side,
to cross. Yep.
There, you're traveling in between locations, and so you're having to go through checkpoints.
Yeah, it's nuts,
and the crazy part is that, as I was reading again, is how the Israelis can just go anywhere.
Right.
But the Palestinians get triple checked.
They get stopped. I mean,
and they're very treated as a second class citizen.
Right.
And that's kind of one of the human rights issues about all this.
When it was their land to begin with, you know what I mean? So after they pushed past the borders and the Jews started to settle within the Arab territories, the Green Line was formed, which was a ceasefire line. Jordan named it the West Bank because it was west of the Jordan River. You know what I mean? Then after that, in 1967, they had the 6-Day War, where Israel took over even more land, including the West Bank. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if I could backtrack for a second, I may have gotten ahead of myself. I think we said they went in and pushed past. Well, they did. They just took even more. They did push past the war before the 6-Day War, but then after the 6-Day War, they took even more land. Yeah. After the Green Line was drawn, which they weren't even acknowledging any rules. You know what I'm saying? Israel looked at the winning of the war as a sign that the Jews were meant to return to the place where Jewish history happened. Keep in mind, I never mentioned any Jewish history. They migrated there under an illegal declaration. You know what I mean? From the beginning, it was never, again, remember, if you look, okay guys, look at the history. When it was 87% Jews, 87% Muslim, 3% Jews, and 10% Christian. Yeah. It was never about any historical thing. This is our land, our country. Everybody lived there in peace. Mm-hmm. No one was claiming anything from a religious standpoint or anything. You know what I'm saying? So they looked at it as a sign, quote unquote, that they should return to the place where Jewish history happened. Now keep in mind, they actually were told to go there because of persecution in Europe. Right. And they wanted their own state. Keep in mind, so I don't know where this meant to return their historical thing comes from, but hey, whatever you need to make yourself feel better, I ain't mad at you. You know what I'm saying? So go ahead.
Only thing I'm going to counterpoint or ask you is, what about the term "to the victor goes the spoils"? So, like that's kind of like how a lot of things have been established and still kind of is, right? Mm-hmm. If I battle, I win this territory, it's mine.
Well, I mean, I hear you, but that's not how they did it, though. I mean, they did it just like they colonized the rest of the world.
Correct.
Wars happened after that, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I'm not referring to I'm just saying when the war was actually fought. Yeah. And they won. That's all. My question.
I mean, that's a good point to bring up, but I think that just because you wrongfully take someone's land, whether it's by war or you just come in and take it, it's still wrong. Just because you had a fight and you won the fight doesn't mean you deserve that property. That's like me going to your condo you just bought, bringing some Bloods and Crips I know in LA and beating you down and saying, if you can't come back here, it's ours now. Just because we won, it's ours. It's the same thing to me. It's the same thing that it's the same. It is, but that the settlers did to the Indians when they came. They genocide. They killed them all. They had a war, and but that doesn't mean that they deserve to be here. You know what I'm saying? It's still wrong what they did.
I'm admitting it's wrong, but that's just how things have always been. So that's all I'm just trying to point out. I get it. But it hasn't always been like that, though, because if you look at, you say the Moors conquered the world. They didn't stay. They said, hey, we came and conquered, we left. This is y'all's. You know what I'm trying to say? So it hasn't always been like that either. I mean, I understand your point, but if you look at history, that wasn't always the MO. If we come into your territory and kick your ass, is ours. That wasn't always the MO. You know what I mean? Some nations were. This would be changing the point, but what was the
group of peoples,
of the Moors even?
I don't know, but I know after they gained those territories, they didn't stay there. You know what I'm trying to say?
Okay.
So I mean, and again, we like plan on covering the Moors, just like I told you in the one, just like we discussed in the one podcast, how the Egyptians came to the U.S. first, saw the people, and left. And they could have. I mean,
some
they
people
were a powerful nation then too. And
I think some probably they looked at it as the travel was probably too hard, but then at the same time thought we came, we saw what we wanted to see, and we moved back.
Because at the end of the day, Chris, colonization is wrong, whether it's through peace or war. Whether you come in and go, listen, we're taking your country. I have guns and you don't, so just please walk away. Or whether you come in with guns blazing and saying, I'm taking your country. Colonization is wrong either way.
I guess I get what you're saying. Okay, it just is part of, I think, human nature, where you want to be part of your group.
Yeah, maybe in a past life you were one of those rulers. That's why you think like that today.
Maybe.
You know what I'm saying? I'm giving Crispy a hard time, y'all, but
I mean that's just how things have always been. Like someone took, fought and took over, and I'm just assuming that they then took on the next land. So that's all. I hear you. What I'm saying is just not right. I hear you, but it's just not right. That that doesn't give the Brits and the Jews right to occupy these people's country just because they won a couple of wars. You know what I mean? And if the tables were turned, what I wanted to say, this is a good time to bring this point up. Guys, if the tables were turned, I'd be saying the same thing about the Palestinians. This is not a race thing. If all this was turned around and, this historically was Jewish, if it's 60-some%.
And the same thing, I would be saying, hey, give the Jews back their property. It's not about race or color or this or that and the other. I mean, what's right is right. If you systemically take someone's land, as you see as I went down the list here, you need to give it back. And there'll never be peace there until they do the right thing. You know what I'm trying to say? But those are some great points.
I would think
interjected.
Easiest way would have been to divide it right in.
Easiest thing would have been
divide it right in half in the middle.
Yeah, divide it down the middle. Yeah, that's what I think too.
Crazy.
So I'm gonna keep going a little bit. I'm almost done. Guys.
Or respect the lines.
Yeah, exactly. Or either respect the
lines. Don't be a line stepper.
Yeah, I mean, why can't we all just live in peace, Crispy? I don't get it. You know what I mean? But I'm gonna keep going a little bit.
Go.
So while the government debated, Israeli citizens moved into the West Bank with no permission and started setting up homes, which in turn, any debate would have to include the new occupiers, which the rest of the world did not approve of. So, after that 6-day war, you know what I mean, and they started to take even more property, the international community said, no, what are you guys doing? There's too much conflict here. This is going to create even more. So everyone was against the Israelis from moving into more of the Palestinian territory. The entire UN, the international community, the UN issued a resolution saying the settlers had no legal validity, and this would cause a serious problem trying to create peace, right? They said the settler activity was illegal. This is the UN saying that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So the Jews saying, hey, we're just returning to our land where history started. The international community and the UN said, no, you can't do that. Yeah. You know what I mean? What are y'all talking about? You know, the Jews tried to say they were taking land from a war that they had from a war that they had meanings to them, but the rest of the world saw it as colonialism, as colonization and illegal. So the Jews were saying with the point Crispy just made, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Well, we won, so we want to take this land. And the international community said, no, it's colonization, it's illegal. It doesn't matter if you won the war. You know what I mean? Which is what I was trying to say. You know what I mean? The Israeli government began to ignore it and help settlers with support and infrastructure, building roads and resources and giving even more permits. You know what I mean? And one of the questions I want to bring up here, I have a note, Chris, is like, why didn't the Arab nations kick in to help the Palestinians at that point? Why didn't the Arab nations come in and say
they did try?
Oh, they did try to come in and say we're gonna help you guys build infrastructure and water. And
no, I'm sorry. I thought you were. I'm sorry. But
I'm talking about on that level.
On that level, that's a good question.
You know what I mean? That's what I want to know.
Because I know that they did fight Israelis, the Israeli government. They did fight them, and the Israeli government was able to keep all those Arabs back.
Right.
Which maybe that's what prevented them from being able to help with the infrastructure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see why they weren't able to help. You know, it seems to me like not only did they take their land, but they also didn't even want them to thrive and prosper in just a human, decent way, and have water and infrastructure and schools.
Things probably would have went better if they would have actually helped each other.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like,
why not? They're all
we just want to be
space.
all one people.
All one people, right.
I mean, you can still, like you said, you can be a different. Like, I guess they could have flipped it on the other side and been like, hey, if we could do this as Israel, we'll give you.
Right.
I don't know, but I'm just throwing out a statement just to throw it out there. But
right.
If there's a lot of things I'm assuming could have been done better. Mm-hmm. Obviously. So,
yeah, I agree. So again, as this infrastructure and building and all this went on, the Palestinians didn't like it, and then they once again began to protest with violence. And I have to say, I don't blame them. You know, so after all this violence, in the 90s, Clinton helped with the Oslo Accords, which you guys could look up, which established a Palestinian government and split the West Bank into 3 sections. It was great because it gave Palestine self-rule for the first time. And again, that's something that shouldn't have even happened. It shouldn't have never been split into 3 sections. The Jews that had came in and occupied it should have just been kicked back out to their territory, out of the West Bank. That's what should have happened. But Clinton tried to help. You know what I mean? The way the land is divided, it prevents Palestine from building an economy. Israel controls water and agriculture, and Palestine has problems accessing these resources, which is completely unfair, right? Then in 2005, Sharon decided to remove Israeli settlers from the Gaza Strip. Israelis were evicted, then as a result settled in the West Bank even more. So then when they kicked them out of the Gaza Strip, the little strip at the edge by the Mediterranean Sea, Sharon...
It's because Sharon is part of Israel.
I know.
And you said
he wanted to kind of stop
Jews
some fighting.
Evicted.
Yeah, he kicked them out. and said, "Hey, you guys get out of the
Do you mean
Gaza
the
Strip."
Palestinians?
No, he actually kicked the Jews out, the Israeli settlers out of the Gaza Strip.
So
which was controversial because he was Israeli.
Okay.
But he was just trying to prevent more conflict.
Got it.
You know what I mean? So
Okay.
so he
was doing the right thing.
Right, he was trying to do the right thing, at least from the Gaza Strip.
Got it.
But what ended up happening was those Jews that were in the Gaza Strip just ended up going into the West Bank. They just ended up going to the West Bank. You know what I'm saying?
What's interesting is the distance that they went to do it, but it makes me wonder why. Because I did see that said a lot of people would settle in those areas because housing was cheaper. So it wasn't.
Because I guess it's because it was away from the water. Me personally, I'd rather be down by the beach, but that's just
I don't know. But so go ahead.
So when that happened, the international community proposed a two-state solution, but that would be tough because of the settling that has been going on the Israeli side, the schools, the university, the housing developments, which shouldn't even be thought of because Israel shouldn't have been there anyway. You know what I mean? So again, they tried to do a two-state solution, but you know what I mean? But by now, because of all the settling that's been going on, it's kind of tough. You know what I'm saying?
Very tough. Yeah.
And one of the things I want to say in closing about this topic is, you know, a lot of people around the world may not care because it doesn't affect them directly. But if you like to travel the world, it does affect you. I mean, my aunt has been to Israel. I have friends in the entertainment industry that's been to Israel. You know, and I mean, and rockets couldn't start flying if you go visit there. You know, and one of the things Marc Lamont Hill said after his UN speech, he said, "Dude, there can't be peace around the world till there's peace in the West Bank and in Palestine." And it's true. I mean, I hear it's a beautiful place, beautiful city, Tel Aviv, all that stuff. I know I'm not comfortable going there, even though my friends say that I can go. Yeah. I'm not comfortable going there.
And I know people who've gone there too, and lived in Israel and stuff like that. And yeah, they said it's beautiful.
Yeah. Great. You know, and one of the things that I want to say, guys, is like, you know, there's no difference between what the Palestinians did and what the Haitians did in Haiti against the French, and what the Cubans did in Cuba against the Americans. To me, after studying this, it sounds like to me it's just an example of another nation not accepting colonization. They're saying, "Hey, this is our country, this is our territory. What are you doing?" Yeah. Just like the Haitians did after slavery, they were brought to Haiti. And they revolted and said, "Hey, you guys ain't coming back in here to take this. You know, you guys made it our country, brought us here as slaves. Now we're gonna fight for it." Yeah. And just like in Cuba, while Castro, you know, and I've been to Cuba and talked to the people and stuff down on the ground, and just like in Cuba, how Castro said, "Hey, America, I may not agree with Castro using communism, but I do agree with what he was trying to do and maintain independence and maintain his statehood and maintain his country and his people." You know what I mean? And it's no difference between what the Palestinians did and what the Cubans did. What if America was constantly moving into Cuba and building communities within Cuba and just leaving the Cuban people on the wayside? It'll be the exact same thing. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? If you think about it in those terms. I mean, when me and my cousin went to Cuba in 2017, it was literally a 30-minute, 45-minute plane ride from Miami. Oh, wow. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you're there, and it's literally a different world. And what if America systemically took Cuba over, and when Fidel rose up, he lost, and then they started settling within Cuba and building infrastructure and just leaving the Cuban people by the wayside and not allowing them to have resources and help. You know what I'm trying to say? It'll be the exact same thing. Yeah. I just doubt. And I don't think they would have done that, though. But I hear you. You don't think the Americans would have done that? Nah. That's what they did to the United States and everywhere else, though. I mean, so I don't. You know what I mean?
But we're talking about United States and United States.
And that's what they did in Puerto Rico without settling there. Same thing they did to Puerto Rico.
I'm not going to deny Puerto Rico. What I'm saying is, I guess what I'm saying is, depending at the time, I think it was more. Yeah, they didn't want communism there. as opposed to
Who are the U.S.?
U.S.
Nah, that's not why it happened though. I mean, for Fidel just and we going off subject here.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about Cuba on another podcast. But yeah, that's definitely not why America. Okay. Yeah, you got.
So my thing is, I'm just thinking, I'm trying to say is, for the most part, America does, or United States does follow the rights of the United Nations and stuff, and would not invade and just take over and put another group of people to the wayside.
Well, yeah, I mean, after you've already done it, you don't have to do it anymore.
Good point. Yeah, good point.
Because they've already done it around the world.
Good point.
So, and another point I want to make is that the same, Brits and Europeans that took over Palestine and is the cause of all the conflict there now is the same people that took over America. It's the same Europeans that came here from the West. You know what I'm trying to say? It just trips me out. It's the same people. You know what I mean? That did it all around the world, man. And again, this is a very intricate subject, and I hope I broke it down as simple as I can. We got a lot of information from Vox and some other sources and stuff like that. Shout out to them. Yeah, but you guys can look this up. But again, hopefully we covered it for you in a cool 45-minute podcast you can listen to on your way to work or something, or while you're working out, so you'll know exactly what's going on there. But that's why the Palestinian people, are fighting so much, because it's their land. It was theirs from the start, and it was systemically, wrongfully taken from them, from declarations and illegal occupation and so on and so forth. But it's theirs, which is why Marc Lamont Hill said what he said. And you guys could Google Marc Lamont Hill and listen to his 20-minute speech from the UN in 2018 as well. It was really good. So yeah, but that's what it's all about. You have anything else you want to say?
Just kind of that along the same line, what he got in trouble for was not being anti-Semitic. And even the statements that Representative Omar is saying, I don't think all of it is, I don't think, it's meant to be anti-Semitic statements either. That she's just saying that the land does not belong to them, and that they have to come up with a better solution. Actually, and her thing is, why is the U.S. supporting them even though they've committed so many wrongs? So
right, she was talking about Israel.
Yeah, or supporting kind of like Israel. Okay,
because I saw clips of that, but I haven't dug into it yet. I heard about it, and I heard all the backlash, but I haven't really watched yet. Yeah, so. Is that anything else you wanted to add, Christy?
Nope, that's it.
All right, guys, so that's our show for today. Tune in next Monday. It's HPR Chronicles with Shakur and Smith. Once again, hopefully we covered the Israeli Palestine conflict for you guys with a bunch of bullet points and just kind of went down the line. It's history, politics, and race. Don't forget to subscribe, follow us on social media. Email us at rptalktruth@gmail.com. We're about facts and truth. It's not our opinion. If we're sorry, not sorry, as I always say. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Because we're just trying to bring you facts and then give our opinion on some of those facts and stuff like that. It's the HPR Chronicles, and we are out.
Peace.